Today I'd like to make a video on why I think software developers should not be insecure in the development and advancement of AI tools, particularly in the field of AI agents. So I am currently a software developer going on maybe 3 years now, and since the AI boom I've been working on with AI in my job since ChatGPT was released. So I've seen firsthand how these tools can augment and develop and improve developer functions. And initially, when the tools came out, it was all, software development jobs are gone, they're going to be replaced, etc., etc. And I don't know. Ever since the start, I've always had an optimistic view of it. You can view the development of cognitive AI agents in two lenses, from what I can see. One is through the scarcity mindset, in which this thing is going to take your job function as it exists, and that can be scary. That can cause insecurity because your livelihood and your way of life depends on your ability to make money with your skill sets, and these agents essentially are promising to put that at stake. And of course, developers are going to have an insecurity at the back of their mind, and not just developers, but anyone that performs a cognitively demanding role that is to be completed on a computer. All of those jobs are at risk, and the way they are currently done now, that's a problem for people that aren't willing to develop and adapt and leverage these tools. So that's one way of looking at it. Me, on the other hand, I look at it as an opportunity. I look at these tools as a way to completely augment the way I perform my job function and give me tremendous amounts of leverage to complete tasks that I otherwise would not have been able to myself, both in terms of leveraging the model's cognitive intelligence and its development capabilities, which supersede mine, to perform functions that I otherwise wouldn't have had the capability or skill set to implement. And it's also the time aspect as well. I can compress way more amounts of what's the term, sort of like code output. I can get a lot more done in a shorter period of time, and not just like a small marginal increase, but significant gains. And I give an example, and it's one that I mentioned in my previous video, but I've been working on an app maybe for the past 2 years now, give or take, on or off. And it's a web-based app. I developed it as a progressive web app, and it's a voice journaling app that allows the user to speak their thoughts and just go in a sort of unstructured monologue, similar to how I'm doing now. It will transcribe that, it will index it, it will do a bunch of AI insights on it, and there's various other features that I've been implementing over the course of a year. Um, Now, when I first started developing this app, I didn't have the skill set to develop mobile apps. It's not something that I'd invested in until that point, but I'd done some web dev, and I was quite confident in building a sort of progressive web app, which essentially is a way that you can create apps using your web development skills and have them run on a mobile device and essentially emulate a traditional app. But I came to the conclusion that if I wanted this app to grow and get any sort of significant use, people are likely not going to be willing to install a progressive web app because there's too much friction. It doesn't exist in the App Store. You essentially need to onboard and train users like how to install this, and the marketing efforts are going to be significantly more challenging. And I got demotivated and essentially ended up dropping the project after that amount of work. Um, so the project had essentially been put on ice. I'd decommissioned it, and I'd moved on to something else because I no longer believed in the future of the app. And I suspect a lot of other developers have done something similar, or maybe got themselves into situations or paths in a project that they've invested a significant amount of time in, but haven't seen the project to fruition. Then comes the release of Claude Code, and I've touched a bit about Claude Code previously, but this is a tremendously powerful tool. And the example and the thing that made me realize that Claude Code was a game changer was I decided to point it at this project that I'd spent a lot of time on, the one that I'd parked. And I'd essentially spent some time conversing with Claude and said, you know what? I've been developing this project for a long time. It's a progressive web app. It's this architecture, etc. But I want it to be a mobile app. I'd like you to migrate it from React to React Native, and I'd like you to transfer all the individual components and migrate them individually, such that the app essentially is a clone, but using all of the native libraries of React Native, and make it look more polished, etc. So I said that, maybe spent 5 minutes conversing, and it came up with a plan. And then essentially printed out a step-by-step plan after doing its own research on the project, how it would go through and follow through and migrate the project. I click yes, and then it gets to work doing research on the project, etc., etc. So I go away downstairs, make a coffee, come back 15 minutes later, and it's done. I'm like, oh, okay, that's quite interesting. So I decide to boot up Expo, run the app, scan the code, and boom, the app that I'd spent a year developing manually with the augmentation of LLMs and ChatGPT, sort of conversing with that, copying, pasting code, and then, essentially being the arbiter between ChatGPT and the project and vibe coding. Spending a year doing that, getting the web app that I previously had running was migrated within the space of 15 minutes to a completely new code base, completely new language, implemented with all the same API calls that the web app had used, and all the same sort of data inputs were the exact same. All of that migrated in the space of about 15 minutes, give or take. And that just blew my mind. And I was like, I've spent a year working on this, and in 15 minutes, an AI agent has come along and replicated it. Now that didn't make me feel insecure. That blew my mind, and just it immediately opened my eyes to the power and the leverage that developers can get while using tools like this. And that was my introduction to Claude Code. And from that, and since then, every day I've been using it to just completely blow out the water the functionality that I would have previously implemented. And I've now, it's reinvigorated my passion for this app. I've spun it back up. I've revived it from the dead. And I'm now powering away, implementing features day after day. And that's just one example of the initial migration. There's complex features that I've asked it to implement that would have taken me multiple weeks to implement previously. Now I can get them done in the space of hours just by conversing, iterating. And these agents are just, they're just so powerful. And I can't wait to see how they progress. It allows the individual developer to be equipped with the leverage that previously would have been granted to entire software teams. And that's what's exciting about it. That's why I don't feel insecure as a developer, is because I know that if push came to shove and I was to be fired tomorrow from my job, having these tools at my disposal allow me to create things that have previously been economically viable for entire corporations to build teams around to get the same amount of output. And that's now been put in the hands of the individual developer for £100 a month. And that's why Claude Code is so powerful. Not only that, again, I've touched on sort of augmenting your intelligence by leveraging these models, which are more intelligent than you, can develop better software than you, things like that. There's the intelligence augmentation aspect, which is super valuable. And there's the time compression aspect, which is super valuable, which allows you to get more done in a short period of time. But the consequence of those two things is that you can then delegate cognitively demanding labor to these agents to perform large scale tasks in a short time frame. That then frees up your bandwidth to then get more done at the same time. So you can delegate these agents to run in the background. You then have more time to either work on your own code, work on the marketing, work on various other aspects, or you could then, with that time freed up, you can then start planning ahead for tasks that are next. And then once you can come up with plans, you can delegate that to more agents that can run in parallel with the existing one. So I think it's going to get to the stage where the developer's role is going to be augmented to the point where they're no longer manually writing code, and what they're doing is that they're essentially orchestrating a team of agents and allocating tasks to them to implement particular features, fix particular bugs, research a particular task, etc. All of these agents are going to be orchestrated by you, and you're essentially the team lead, you're the manager, you're the product owner, which commands this army of agents to implement features at your bidding. And I think that software developers, that's going to be the future role of software developers, is they're going to become product owners, which know how to code, which understand how to code, which understand system thinking and architecture design, and can guide the agents in the same way that currently maybe a senior or a principal developer would do in an organization. That skill set is going to reduce down to the level of the developer. And I think developers are going to they're going to quickly become more accustomed to learning what the best architecture is, and not just focusing on code, but focusing on building systems that are scalable and reliable. And it's going to be a lot more breadth over depth. That's one thing I'm really excited about. So yeah, just wanted to get my thoughts out about Claude Code. Every developer should be using it. They should be leveraging it, and they shouldn't be scared to spend the money on it, because it's an absolute bargain. It's a steal. If you can afford it, you should do it. So I'll leave it there, but definitely recommend it.